Thank you. Yes, hello. My name is Jung-heum, and I am a drama director. Ah, that's my child, oh dear. My most recent work is a show called Inspector Koo. Actress Lee Young-hee stars as Kuk-young, a very suspicious detective, and she pursues a serial killer named K, played by actor Kim Hae-jun in this comic action human melodrama. It's a show that has every genre in it. So, for those who enjoyed Kuk-young, some even gave it the generous praise of opening a new chapter in Korean drama's female narratives. But on the other hand, to be honest, I also received a lot of criticism. There was a recurring comment that kept popping up during the broadcast of Inspector Koo, just when I thought I could forget. Why are there only women in this show? It sounded like an insult, but I thought to myself, I must really be making Inspector Koo with all my effort and doing a good job. To talk about this a bit more, I think I need to share something personal for a moment. I actually grew up in one of the most conservative cities in Korea and went to all boys' middle and high schools. Among the women in my family, my younger sister is here, by the way. Aside from my sister and my mother, I hardly ever had the chance to talk with women. Then I came to Seoul and entered university, and because of the nature of my department, 70% of the students were women. Yes. So, getting along well with women became a matter of survival for me. I also earned my degree in graduate school with a focus on feminist cultural theory. The drama I mainly discussed in that thesis was Jewel in the Palace, starring the actress Lee Young-hee. Yes. So, at the time, I never even dreamed that I would end up working on a project with such a renowned actress. If you look at this photo here, you can see that I'm talking very comfortably. Yes, so-called a successful fan. A very big one. Yes, I am a successful fan. But unfortunately, regarding my thesis, my professors said, "Wow, I never thought this was all you could write. I'm really disappointed." Even though I received such harsh criticism, they still let me pass. So I gave up on my academic dreams, and yes, that's how I ended up on the path of a drama producer. Yes, when I first joined the broadcasting company in 2008, on the very first day of new employee training, we took a bus to visit the set at the Ilsan Tanhyeon Production Center. Honestly, it's a bit difficult to talk about this in such a public place like this, but at the set, there were just so many sexually harassing remarks being thrown around. So, to be honest, I was really shocked. I had spent my entire college life in a somewhat women-friendly environment, but when I went to the broadcasting company, I thought, are people really saying things like this here? What on earth is going on? And when I actually started working in the drama department, there was only one senior female PD. When I joined as a drama PD, there were 4 people in my cohort, and 2 of us were women. So out of about 50 drama PDs, there were only 3 women. So maybe because it was an organization with almost no women, I found it really hard to endure the various words and actions that took place there. Even considering that it was 2008, dramas have women as their main audience, but people with no gender sensitivity at all were the ones making these dramas. So that's why Korean dramas have problems, I thought to myself, and decided, let me try to change things. I guess that's the kind of thought I had. But my assistant director period lasted 7 years. At that time, it was mandatory for us to work as assistant directors for 7 years, and I realized it wasn't something I could change just by my own will. During that time, yes, I worked on all kinds of drama genres. Some were big hits, some were flops. I did melodramas, genre pieces, really a wide variety. But as for works that could be called women-centered narratives, I think there was just one, maybe only one. But even that, by today's higher standards, probably wouldn't even be considered a women-centered narrative. Yes. Of course, it's not like there weren't any cool female protagonists, but I don't think they played leading, proactive roles that drove the story as much as their coolness would suggest. So now you're probably curious. You said that after finishing being assistant director, you became a director. Did you direct a proper women-centered narrative? To that, I can say this confidently. So what do you think? Well, do you think I did? If I had, I wouldn't be talking like this, right? No, I wasn't able to direct such a piece. Yes. For my debut, there was a short film called I've Got My Eye on You. After that, there was my first feature film called Falsify, which features some truly amazing female characters. Jang Young-nam played a detective, Ji-won played a prosecutor, and Jun Hye-bin played a reporter. I poured all the ideal qualities of those professions into the female characters. But as cool as they were, they didn't really play the leading, driving roles in the story, to be honest. So for my third project, I decided to create a story with a female detective as the sole lead and really focus on a female narrative. I spent about 2.5 years planning and producing it, working hard throughout that time. But even back then, and still now, I feel it's a bit ambiguous to confidently say anywhere that I created a female-centered narrative. So in my personal opinion, while the project itself was successful, I think the female narrative aspect failed. Yes, then I received the script for Inspector Koo the first time. Yes. So, when I first received it, I looked at the first few pages of the proposal for the drama, you know. If you look, it lists all the characters. But as I flipped through about 4 pages, there were only women appearing. There were no male characters, and on top of that, each of them had such a distinct personality. So, like I mentioned earlier, there's a detective, a murderer, then a really vicious foundation director, and then an ordinary office worker. Just such a wide variety. It was a female narrative with so many different characters. I was really happy when I read the script, but at the same time I also felt a bit discouraged. Why hadn't I thought of such an amazing female narrative until now? Yes. Well, if I were to make a bit of a lame excuse, yes. At broadcasting stations, there's what you might call a formula for successful shows. Yes. At least when I was making shows a few years ago, female narratives weren't included in that formula. A cool female character is necessary in a drama. But if the woman is the main character, it's hard to succeed. A drama must always follow the narrative of a cool male lead. I'm putting it a bit bluntly, but that was the kind of formula we had. Honestly, it's more like a prejudice. Yes, there was a bit of that. You know, our drama industry is extremely competitive. I really wanted to do well. So, because I wanted to succeed, I wanted to follow more mainstream formulas. Honestly, I didn't want to clash with the higher-ups at the company, so while planning those kinds of projects, I still had a conscience. So I always made sure to include cool female characters. Yes. But yes, no matter how I put it, it's just a cowardly excuse. Yes, I know. So the male protagonist. But fortunately, as I mentioned earlier, those 2 works, Targeting You and Manipulation, did much better than expected. So I got a sort of free pass from the company. So do whatever you want. That gave me the opportunity to work on projects in the direction I wanted, and that's how I planned and directed the work Nobody Knows. It's a story about a remarkable female detective, played by actress Kim Seo-hyung, who has a complicated past and solves a series of murders connected to the death of an old friend. But actually, while working on that project, I started to feel, in a different sense, the flow of the times, you could say. Or maybe you could call it change. I really felt that kind of thing. In my opinion, having a really cool female detective in the violent crimes unit, which is usually overflowing with men, and seeing her take command of all those men and solve cases decisively, I thought that was just so cool. I thought it would be incredibly impressive. So fortunately, there were a lot of viewers who were really passionate and supportive as well. But for some viewers, just having a female detective as the lead wasn't quite enough to satisfy them. It seemed like they wanted to see a story where other women, playing a variety of roles, were also active around the female detective. So in our case, the villains were men, and the other detectives around were also men, so basically there were just too many men visible in a single frame. Seeing that, I realized, we've reached a time when having just one cool female protagonist isn't enough anymore. As a TV drama director, I was quite proud, thinking I was making a really cool show that broke the conventions of the broadcasting station, but the viewers were already way ahead of me. So yes, at that time I really felt just how dull and behind I'd become, and it was in that situation that I received the script for Inspector Koo from the production company. Honestly, I was really shocked. As I mentioned earlier, not only was it striking that the main character was a woman from the very first few pages, but also the content itself. And I could sense that they were pushing forward with this concept, even at the expense of some mainstream appeal. I thought, wow, outside of the broadcasting station, they're boldly planning such a progressive female narrative. So after having a deep discussion with my wife, I handed in my resignation at the company. Yes. Well, I don't think it's really something that deserves applause or anything. Yes. Basically, I was starting to feel a bit numb, falling into a kind of routine, and I really didn't like that feeling. I always thought I was trying hard to be thoughtful and reflective, but I realized I had already become quite numb, just going through the motions out of habit. So I don't really think of myself as someone who's ahead of the times. However, even if I can't get ahead of this changing world, I at least want to walk alongside it. That's why I made that choice. But actually, a lot of people used to think that Korean dramas didn't have strong female narratives. However, Korean dramas have always had a lot of female-centered stories. Even though there have been ups and downs over time, they've always been there. For example, what I consider the best female narrative drama, Jewel in the Palace, is already 20 years old. There were quite a few even in works from the 1990s. But I think the female narratives in Korean dramas from 2021 and 2022 were on a different level. They were truly diverse and captivating women at the center of the stories. The genres became more varied, and many of these works achieved both commercial and critical success. So now, as I mentioned earlier, it's an era where the old formulas from the past, aside from the traditional broadcasts, no longer apply. The world is definitely changing, and I believe that no matter how many people try to go against this current, the flow of change will inevitably keep moving forward, little by little. So even though there are still areas that need improvement, I believe things are gradually getting better, step by step. For example, as I mentioned earlier, the sexual harassment and sexual violence that I experienced during my start are now gradually disappearing from dramas. This is not only for the Uncanny Counter, but for all dramas currently being produced these days. It's called the Drama Production Site Guide, which is attached at the very beginning of every drama. The contents of this guide vary slightly depending on the project, production company, or broadcasting station, but in general, it sets standards for things like sexual harassment, abuse of power, and safety, and there is a concerted effort to strictly enforce these standards. Of course, there are still some people who haven't adapted yet. Those people are, in fact, naturally or sometimes forcibly being distanced from the set. Also, when I was in my 4th year as an assistant director, out of the entire 365 days in a year, I only had exactly 15 days off, including weekends and holidays. And at that time, my weekly working hours exceeded almost 140 hours. So the issue of working hours has always been a challenge in the broadcasting industry, but now, such unreasonable labor is becoming systemically impossible. So, as I mentioned earlier, compared to 2008, when female drama PDs made up less than 10%, my previous workplace has now raised the proportion of female drama PDs to almost 40%. Drama is increasingly showing changes toward becoming more equal and less discriminatory content. In the past, things that were wrapped up as romance in dramas, like the male lead suddenly confessing his love to the female lead, forcing a kiss, or pinning her against a wall, those kinds of scenes, yes. Now, when scenes like that appear, viewers don't just sit back and accept it. Seriously, the internet and social media go wild, really. So, it's not just big changes, but even these small details are being incorporated, which is why I believe that no matter what anyone says, equality and what we call political correctness are naturally becoming a part of content. And I think that directors and writers who can't keep up with this kind of sensitivity are gradually losing, or will lose, their place. Well, I know this sounds like self-praise. Yes. Someone once said, after watching Inspector Koo, that Lee Jung-heum is a director ahead of her time. That wasn't me who said it, yes. But honestly, it wasn't me who went ahead. It was the writer Sung Cho-hee who wrote Gyung-I and the CEO Park Seong-hae who produced it, 2 or 3 people. I think it's those 3 people. I just tried really hard to keep up with the stage those forward-thinking women had set. And personally, I believe that writer Sung Cho-hee and producer Park Seong-hae also sensed that the world was changing. And they wrote and produced Inspector Koo to keep pace with that change. I'm not the kind of director who believes that dramas can make the world a better place. Yes. When I make my next drama, I want to reflect a world that's a little better than the one I showed in my previous work. So I hope that my works will become better and better, just as the world improves. So I hope that our viewers, who are the source and hope of my creativity, will help make the world a better place. That way my works will naturally improve as well. Yes. But now, as a viewer rather than a director and as a citizen, I will also continue to do my best. Thank you for listening.